Okay, for this project, what we are going to be accomplishing is what looks like this, which is your sneaker project based on Jeff Cole's work, which we looked at in class. Remember for this project that you must select an image of a person or an animal or even a character from a movie, and then some sneakers that you want to use to design the rest of the face, similar to what you see on all these pictures. So, what are the steps? Inside your folder, in your Project 2 folder, you're going to be collecting images of different things. What are you going to be collecting is the question. Here's what you're going to be collecting. First of all, you are going to collect an image of a person. In this case, I'm using Abraham Lincoln. Also, you're going to find images of the sneaker and all the different turnaround shots of that sneaker. You can collect more than one pair of sneakers. In this case, I have 2 pair of sneakers. Okay, so where do you get these? We talked about it in class real quick. Go to that GOAT website, this one here. Once you get to the GOAT website, should look like this for you. And then you can find your sneaker or go up to the search and type in what you want. So for example, I typed in the Kyries and what came up like this, right? And then when you click on the sneaker, you actually have to click it again, and then you'll see all the different turnaround shots of the sneaker, and then you can drag those into your folder. Now, once you've dragged them into your folder, they are going to come up as these WEBP files, and Photoshop does not like those. So we are going to select all of them by clicking and dragging all the WEBP files. We're going to right-click on them and select Quick Actions and Convert Image. Once you've done that, it's going to ask you what you want to convert the images to. You're going to say JPEGs, actual size, and then hit Convert to JPEG. So this takes a few seconds. After it's done, here's what you'll see in your folder. All of the JPEGs will be highlighted, and the WEBP files you can get rid of. So I'm going to go on to all these. I'm holding Command on my keyboard to select all these WEBP files, and I am going to get rid of them. Right-click and trash. Okay, so how do you start this project? You're going to go to Photoshop. You're going to go to File and New. Once you're there, you're going to select from the top preset options, Print. We're going to use a tabloid size for this at a 300 resolution. So this all looks good, 11, 17, 300, RGB and white, and then we're going to hit Create at the bottom. Once that new document has popped up, and just so you're used to seeing it the way that you normally see it, I am going to go to Window and turn the application frame on. And if your layers panel was down here in the corner, I'm going to have that pulled out. So the first step for you is to bring in the image of the person, character, or animal that you want. So you're going to have to go back into your folder, find that image, drag and drop it onto the artboard. Once it's on here, you can click and drag to change the scale, change the size of it, right? So we're only focusing on the face, so I'm going to make it about that size. That looks good to me. I'm going to hit the checkbox up top, or I'm going to hit Enter on my keyboard, Return, right? And if you see on your layers panel that the icon for the smart object shows up, you're going to right-click on that and choose Rasterize. Okay, so then we have to split the head down the middle, because remember, we're only doing half the face, and then we're going to copy and flip it later. So I see on mine, I have some rulers here on the side and at the top of my screen. If you don't see those, just be sure to go to View and then go down and make sure Rulers is checked. If it's not checked, check it. And then what you're going to do is go over to that ruler, click and drag from that ruler out from the left all the way to the right of your screen, and put it right, and kind of try to position it right in the middle of whatever face you have chosen. There we go. Then we're going to go to that layer in the layers panel and bring down the opacity to about 65 or so. You can even type it in if you'd like. Then we're going to lock that layer by hitting this lock, which will lock everything on that layer, because I don't want to accidentally put anything on that layer. And now on top of what you see here on your screen, you are going to begin to build. Okay, so how are you going to build? What are you going to do? Well, you have to go back to your folder and start by grabbing one of the images of the sneaker that you want to use. So I don't care which one you use. You may not use all of them. That's okay. I'm going to use this one as my first example, and I'm going to drag and drop this right on top of my document. It shows up like this. I'm going to hit the checkbox to OK it, and once again, just remember, if you see this little icon right here, you're going to right-click and select Rasterize Layer. Okay, once that is done, we are going to go over to the left-hand side of our screen where it has all of our selection tools, And we're going to start by going to these first two. If I right click on it, I can see the rectangular marquee tool and the elliptical marquee tool. So for the first one, rectangular marquee tool, we're going to go up to the top. This is a new selection option. This will add to your selections. This will subtract. So I'm going to start with this one, this is the new selection. And feathering, I'm going to keep it as 0. Remember, if there's a number in here, it means the edge of this cutout would be soft and feathery. And we're going to make sure that the style is normal. So what you're going to do is you're going to go over. I actually am going to zoom in a little bit first, do Command plus a few times to zoom in. And then with this tool, you can click and drag to create a box. Once you've created the box, you right-click inside the box and you select Layer via Cut. And that is going to cut that box out from its original layer onto a new layer. So if I do it, you'll see a new layer has been added here. And this is, I just want to show you what it kind of looks like here, right? So if I hide these, it cut it out onto this layer, so you can see it right there. And then if I hide that one and I turn this one on, you can see that on this layer, where the rest of the sneaker was, I had actually cut that away from the original sneaker. Okay, the second option that we looked at in class was the elliptical marquee tool. Works exactly the same way. You click on this first one, no feathering, normal. You go over to the sneaker and you click and you drag. Now the only thing you might want to note is that if you hold shift, you can get a perfect circle, or if you hold shift, you can get a perfect rectangle if you have the rectangle tool selected. And if I want to do the exact same step, I just have to remember that I need to be on, I'm going to come down a little bit here, that I'm going to be on the actual layer that has the sneaker on it, not on layer 1 where the little box is, because that doesn't have the pixels I'm looking for. I want to grab it from the original. So I'm back on the sneaker layer, I right click inside the circle I just made, and I can select Layer via Cut. Okay, so what do I have now if I zoom out? I have all these different layers, right? So the first layer has a little box on it, the second layer has the circle on it, and the third layer has the rest of the sneaker on it. Okay, very good. So I'm going to go to layer 1 right now, which is the one that has the box on it. And in order to move this box around, I have to go to my Move tool, which is the top tool on the left-hand side of my toolbar, or I can hit V on my keyboard to get to. And then with that, I can select that box because I'm on that layer, and I can drag and move it wherever I would like. So if I wanted to use this, let's just say for skin, you know, maybe over here along the edge. Remember, you're only doing half the face, so I'm not going to go past that line. I'm going to stop right about there. The next step for you on this piece is to go to Edit and Free Transform, or Command T on your keyboard. Once you've done that, you'll see a box pops up, and with this box, you have a lot of options. What options do you have? Well, you can click and drag to make it bigger or smaller and change the scale of it. You can go off past the corner right here, click, and you can rotate it in any direction that you want. You can also right click and choose from any of these other pieces. These are transformation tools. So like skew, for example, will allow me just to skew kind of one edge out. If I go to distort, I can do a very similar thing, and I can cross over it, and I can pull this, and I can do a whole bunch of stuff with that. If I go to perspective, that'll make it look like it's coming at me or going away from me, so those are options. And then the last one is warp, and if you do warp, you're going to get a little grid that's on here, and you can individually pull these little handlebars and these anchor point dots around. Be careful not to touch that line again. Oops, right there. You can go right to the edge, and you can pull the points like this, right? You can pull the little handlebars. You can even go inside and kind of move it around. Now, you don't want to go too extreme with this, because obviously when you start to pull it and warp it too much, it begins to look like a blurry sort of mess, okay? But you can warp these things any which way that you like, and as soon as you like it, you're happy with it, you hit the checkbox up top, or you hit Enter on your keyboard. And so if I zoom out, you can see I've now placed one piece in that area. Now, that wasn't a very large piece. Maybe I would have been better off picking a larger piece from a different piece of the sneaker, but just to show you how that initially works. So I'm going to now go hide that one for a moment. I'm going to turn back on the sneaker like this. And this time I'm going to use a different tool. So I'm going to go back up to my tool. So the first two that we looked at were rectangular and elliptical. The next set here, lasso, polygonal lasso, and magnetic lasso, here's how they work. If I go to my lasso tool, up at the top, new selection, 0 feathering. I go over to my sneaker and I start to draw. So if I start to draw, right, I could go something like this. And I could basically trace out or draw where my selection would be, right? I can grab a piece of the sneaker, just like that. And I go back to where I started, I let go, I see those little selection dots that show up. If I want to add to it, up at the top of my screen here, I select the Add To button, and then I can go back over to that piece and I can add more if I wanted to. Like that. You can add as many as you want now because the Add button is selected, right? If I go to the Subtraction button, which is this one, I could now subtract that piece, right? Or any other pieces that I want. So you can add and subtract from any selection at any time like that. And then again, right click, layer via cut, and that is going to cut that piece off of the original sneaker. Layer, remember, will only work if you're on the layer that actually has the pixels. In my case, it's this one that says 940511 blah 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 blah. Hit cut, layer via cut. Okay, so now that one is on its own layer right there. So we're gonna look just at the next two real quick, and that is the polygonal lasso tool. And the way that this one works, I'm going to go back to my sneaker, hide this one for a moment, go back to the sneaker. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see better. And this one, what it does is it goes from point to point. So again, I'm going to zoom in. Here's how it works. I click one point with this lasso tool. This is the polygonal lasso tool. Wherever I click next, it's going to make a straight line. So if I click, 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 right, hold the space bar, move out a little bit, click, click, and I'm following the edge, click, and then I come back, click, click, click. It makes a straight line every time. So this is good for something that has a lot of straight lines. Like from here all the way to here is pretty much straight. So all I got to do is click, click, close it up. There's my new selection. You can see it, right? Right click, layer via cut. Same thing now. Now that piece is on its own layer. So it looks like this. And then last but not least, for now, we're going to use the magnetic lasso tool. So the magnetic lasso tool, I'm going to turn back on the sneaker, go to that layer one more time. Allows Photoshop really on this tool to kind of see the difference between different colors. And so let's say you want this pink piece. You just click on the edge. This is the magnetic lasso tool, this one here. And you go right to the edge and you start to kind of click like this. And it'll do the clicks for you in between. All those little dots are being made by the computer, not by me. I'm just sort of moving my mouse around the edge of the area and close it. So like there's an example. You can always go back into any of these and fix them. You can use any of the selection tools, the lasso, the polygono, any of them. You can add the add button or the subtract button, and I can go into any of this and fix it. So if I wanted to like make this perfect, I would subtract that little piece. And if I wanted to make this perfect, I would subtract that little piece. And I want to add something, I hit the add button up top, and now I can add any pieces that we need like this. And I can make it perfect, right? Make your cutouts as perfect as you can so that you can make the best use of them when you try to use them in the face. Right click, layer via cut, hide this piece again. Okay, so there's my piece. It might be a little jagged on certain spots, but it looks pretty good. Then your options are this. So once you've used those different cutout tools to cut out your pieces, you can use the move tool now, the top tool on the toolbar, go to the layer, move the piece around, right? And then you kind of have to make a decision, like where could this piece go? Remember, you're only doing half the face, but you're going to try to find a spot where you think maybe you could use this thing. You can still do edit and free transform. You can still rotate, you can still resize it a little bit, don't go crazy. Right click, you can still try these, you can warp it, but again, don't go crazy, don't warp it too much because it will get blurry on you. And then, so that's sort of like your option one, let's say, where you cut out the piece and then you warp it. Option two works just a little bit differently, but you might like it the same or better, and here it is. I hide everything, turn back on just the image of the person first. And so then what I would do is I would take one of those lasso tools or polygonal lasso tools, and I would draw out a piece of, or I should say trace with a selection with one of these tools, an area of the face. So for example, the eyebrow. So I might go like this. I'm just going click, 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 you know, Abraham Lincoln here with his big bushy eyebrows, okay? And I'm sort of following all those areas I see to make that selection that you see right there. Okay, and then for this option two, here's the difference. I do it with just looking at the face, but then I'll turn back on the sneaker so I can actually see the sneaker and the selection at the same time. Then what I want to do is I want to move this selection around. In order to move this selection, all I have to do is go to any one of these tools, doesn't matter which one of the selection tools I use, but when I'm on that selection tool, whichever one I choose, I have to be on this first button, this one here, new selection. And if I'm on that, it will allow me to take this selection, go to the middle of this selection, and move it like this. Just click and drag it. And so now this selection is sort of alive, living on top of the sneaker. And so you start moving it around and you think to yourself, well, where could I put this? Or what part of the sneaker would look cool in that area for his eyebrow? And so maybe like this area or this area or this area, I don't know. And then you right click, layer via cut. As long as you're on the layer that has the sneaker on it, right click, layer via cut. And now that exact shape has been cut out. So it looks like this. And if I take my move tool and I move it, I could now move it right into place exactly where it should be. And so you can cut pieces just like that as well. So you basically have two options for the project. All right. When you are finished with the project, come see me. We're going to put a background on it. We're going to put the sneakers in the front of it, and we'll put your name and label on it before we hand it in on Google Classroom.